guys, Girl Got Game here with my final thoughts for England Exchange. Let's hop into it and see how long I actually blather for. I think it'll come as no surprise that I have some mixed feelings about this particular game. I'm going to start with what I really liked and go from there though. So, positives for this game. Premise is good. American college student going to England for a semester and using this as an opportunity to try new things and maybe fall in love is a good one. The artwork's really nice, both background and sprite art. Everyone's very attractive in this hostel, that's for sure. They also have various facial expressions and poses, which is a definite bonus. It helps to give some life to the characters. CG art also is very nice. However, I truly wish there had been more than one CG per route. Not that the fun time CGs aren't appreciated, but it would have been nice to see the couple do something on at least one of the dates, and or at least have an epilogue CG of some description. This is one of the few VMs I've played where there aren't really smooching CGs. I think Jihyo is the only one to have a full-on smooch CG, and that's it. What else? Music. Music's okay. Nothing stands out as being particularly awesome, but the different tracks definitely fit the style and mood of the game. It's nice that they give you the option also to play as either a male or female character with both male and female romance options. Although, as it turns out, a lot of those shared routes between characters didn't end up having that much differentiation, which was a bit disappointing. Ashley and Brendan's routes were definitely the highlights as far as having same character route for both MCs and it being significantly different experiences. And I think that's really it as far as positives go. Now onto the not so positives. You all probably know what I'm going to talk about here, and that's the writing. Now, I will preface this by saying that overall the writing is good, and I think they did a great job of writing each of the characters in such a way that they all felt unique from each other. Even Flynn and Malia, oddly enough, have enough differences between their thoughts and reactions to things that they felt unique to each other. The writing, or the overarching story, is a funny thing in this one, though. It all goes very swimmingly until, you guessed it, the thieving incident. Ooh boy. Most of the characters' reactions to this one, not a fan of, let's say. You could make a case for the other hostel mates being upset with you when you're not on their route, because you wouldn't have spent as much time with them as when on their individual routes, but with the exception of Danny the Awesome, and I guess technically Brandon and Aussie, but they don't really count because it's their fault in the first place. Everyone turns on you, wants nothing to do with you, won't even hear you out or give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't know, guys, maybe I'm weird, but if one of my friends, never mind someone I'm romantically invested in, like my husband, if one of my friends was accused of doing something shady, would not immediately turn on them and be like, I can't believe you completely fooled me. How dare you? I never want to set eyes on you again. Like, I would want to hear their side of the story at the very least. At the very least. I think at one point when Nene and Jinsu call you, she says something along the lines of, do you think your friends owe you their instant understanding and forgiveness? Honestly, yes. Nene and Jinsu are the MC's friends and don't freak out on them when they explain what went down. What did they do? Oh yeah, they're instantly understanding and supportive because they're your friends. And if you go by Peggy's outburst of, we're supposed to be a family, then there should be even more willingness to hear the MC's side of the story. Especially when you know that one of the other hostel mates has been making their life a living hell ever since they came to England. And I honestly think what bothers me the most about that whole thing is that there's a lot of unused potential there. I mean, you can have it where some of your romantic partners are thrown off by the accusation or questioning things, but the way the relationship gets mended is so ridiculous at times. Usually gets resolved with either the MC having to crawl through broken glass to apologize for something they didn't even do, or the romantic partner deals with it by saying, let's just go on as though nothing ever happened, and I'll try to forget you're a horrible person that did this. Sometimes it's a combination of the two. Sometimes, in the case of Peggy for instance, they do horrible things to the MC and don't apologize for it, but still demand an apology of them. There's just so many other ways this could have been handled better. I think what also is so aggravating about this is that the person who set you up comes forward and admits to doing it, No one apologizes to you. No one. Plus, it seems like they really don't care about the fact that that person actually did it. They don't start shunning that person. It's almost like, well, we knew they were terrible people all along, so whatever. I guess you can continue to live here and we won't go out of our way to snub you or anything. I'm sorry. I promised myself I was going to try and keep my ranting on that to a minimum, but I did have to get my feelings out about that because it bothers the heck out of me. It was the one major niggly thing that kept me from truly liking this game, so I had to talk about it. There really wasn't anything else negative-wise, other than the small things I had listed before my rant, but that part of the story and the character's response to it just really grinds my beans. I will say that overall I have a positive experience with the game and enjoyed it. I would recommend it to others, but with the caveat of do Danny's route first. Underline, stars. I think literally doing any of the other ones first could turn someone off. But then again, I'm sure not everyone would have the same reaction to the thieving plotline as I did, but I would still recommend going with Danny first anyways. Oh, and speaking of Danny, I guess now would be a good time to segue into individual character routes and where I rank them both on Malia and Flynn's side of things. We'll start off with our girl Malia, since that's where we began. I'll work from the bottom up for my list. So, coming in dead last, and not a shocker to anyone, I'm sure, is Brendan. Brendan's an interesting case, though, I must admit. I'll go a little more into what I think of him and his character on Flynn's side of things. But as far as Molly is concerned, he was a real douche canoe. I mean, let's be honest. He's an absolute terrible person to have a relationship with. Literally manipulated Malia into sleeping with him so he'd be able to add another victim to his list, and he was also controlling in their relationship too, telling her she's fat, complaining about spending too much of his money on her, blah blah blah. Yeah, he was literally the worst. That's where he lies on the list, the bottom. Okay, next up from Brendan would have to be Peggy. Again, going to try and avoid going on a rant here. I will say that up until the thieving incident, I really liked Peggy. She's a ball of fun, chaotic energy, going full tilt into everything and anything. A tomboy who wants to be viewed as feminine in her own right. I enjoyed all those aspects of Peggy. However, her particular handling of the thieving incident, where she starts slandering the MC to everybody and anybody, really rubbed me the wrong way personally, which is why she's so far down the list here. Alright, next one on the list is Ashley. Ashley's very sweet and bubbly and super conscientious of what others think of her. Or conscious, I guess I should say. At the same time, she tries not to let fear stop her from new experiences. She was definitely a very sweet root. But the thing that bothered me about Ashley is how staunchly she holds out and not forgiving the thieving incident, even after everyone else in the hostel starts to. I'm particularly bothered because she keeps trying to see the good in everyone and give people second chances, but doesn't extend that courtesy to the MC. Now, I will say she did just come off a horrible experience with Brendan, so that might have made her more wary, but gosh darn it, girl. What a time to pick to be more wary. You'll forgive Brendan, but not the MC. But she did have a super adorable epilogue that ended her route on a sweet note, though, so that was good. Next up is Jihyo. She ranks highest of the ladies on Malia's side, and for good reason. Jihyo was definitely one of the characters that I wanted to know more about. She had such a Jekyll and Hyde personality, with her trying so hard to get on that flow, man. And I was so curious why she was like that. Eventually, she confesses that she's trying to put on this fake bohemian artist personality because that's who she wants to be, rather than live up to her parents' expectations for her to work hard in the family business and settle down with a good husband. I think what I appreciated about Jihyo was her bluntness, and how even though she also doesn't believe that you aren't guilty of stealing, she also takes the time to acknowledge that she has lied to you as well, and that you have every right to be upset at her, even hate her as she fears, and that you both have to acknowledge what the other's done, or not done in the MC's case, and move forward from there. I also liked that in both her neutral and bad end, she comes to apologize to you regardless, and the neutral end's especially nice since you leave as friends. Alrighty, then we have Danny Boy. Danny's such an awesome guy. Kind of scary sometimes when his eyes go all dark. But I'm seriously in awe of how much work he puts into trying to be a good person, even though it does not come naturally to him at all. Also, the fact that he's completely honest with you about his past and his flaws, and that he truly believes you when you tell him you didn't steal, because having come to know you, he knows you would never do anything like that. Thank you, Danny, for being a normal human being. And I also can't help but laugh that he'd be okay with you stealing anyway, since you'd be more on his level. But anyway, Danny's great. I love that we got a proposal on his route too. That was so sweet. He's definitely a solid number 3 for me. Okay, number 2's gotta go to my boy Angie. The boy who distracted me from the start, calling me Kara. I really love Angie. I think he's lovely. True gentleman, an absolute goober about expressing himself. I was laughing so hard when it came out he argues with Malia so much because he's had a crush on her since he first met her. And she's so unlike the women he's used to that he's just at his wit's end. His way of handling the thieving thing was interesting, to say the least. He was initially mad, but as it turns out, not for the fact that she stole, quote unquote, but because he felt like Malia didn't rely on him enough to help her and turned to thieving instead. But once she can actually talk to him, he immediately believes her and is relieved that's not what actually happened. That's such a goob. I also love that they did all of that in front of Aussie and just rubbed the whole thing in her face. It was great. Also got a proposal off camera as the epilogue shows them flying to Italy to meet his mama and sisters after they're engaged. Very sweet. The only thing that bothered me was Malia constantly bristling at tiny comments made by Angie and viewing it as misogyny. To be fair, Angie does sometimes put his foot in his mouth, like when he asks her to cook for him, but what he says is never meant in an insulting way. In fact, it's often the opposite. Like with the food thing, he was just trying to say he'd love to try some of her cooking, especially since they're so close and everything, but it came out totally the wrong way. I also just now remembered how many times these guys were throwing their clothes off around each other. Do you remember that, guys? Oh my goodness, the thirst in that route was crazy. Ridiculousness. So yeah, number 2 for sure, and coming in at number 1 for Malia has to be Mark. I honestly had no idea what to expect with him. Everyone in the hostel was weirded out by him, the MC was weirded out by him, and I'm just sitting here going, he seems pretty normal, though? I mean, he has quirks, for sure, but even those were things I loved. His over-the-top confession, quoting poetry, and having a rose on hand was just, mwah, chef's kiss. His positivity was so infectious, too. It was surprising to find out he had a pretty dark and sad past that he doesn't like to talk about. The fact that he does share with the MC shows how much he comes to care for and trust them. And I love that we actually got to introduce him to our American friends with a double proposal epilogue. That was great. His neutral and bad endings were also really sweet. Mark is just such a great guy, and I adored him to pieces. Easy number 1 for me. Okay, and now we switch to my son, Flynn. Coming in at the bottom for Flynn is definitely Aussie. I mean, she's a gold digger and also super manipulative in the relationship. She bullied Flynn something fierce. I was impressed with how long she committed to the con. It was also very satisfying being all, you should really move on, Aussie. I already have, in her neutral ending. I felt terribly for the horrible headspace Flynn was in on her bad ending, though. Which reminds me, I totally forgot to mention that on Malia's route with Brendan. Both of those bad endings leave the MCs in such broken places. It was really rough to see. I do have to say that as a character, Aussie's definitely had a rough past that's very briefly touched on. From what we got, she got involved with a guy at 14 who treated her like dirt. I assume something happened from that estranged her from her family so that she's had to fend for herself. She basically, sells her body for all intents and purposes to get nice things in life. She's super jaded and insecure, but she also shows that she has pricks of conscience still. In the bad end for Flynn, for instance, even when he's willingly ignoring all the red flags, she tells him straight up she's been using him and tries to justify her actions to him, which you wouldn't have to justify if you didn't feel at least a little bit guilty. And with Malia, she does willingly come out and admit her role as setting you up with very little effort on your part. So there is still some good in Aussie, but as she is, she's Definitely not a good person to be in a relationship with, so here she will lie at the bottom of Flynn's list. Next up is Peggy. She's at the same spot as she was on Malia's list. I know it's probably sacrilege to have her listed below Brendan, but I won't reiterate my problems with Peggy because I ranted on about that enough already. Suffice to say, this is where she is on my list since nothing much changed between Malia and Flynn with her route. And above Peggy, I've put Brendan. Shockingly, I came to like Brendan a lot more on Flynn's side than on Malia's. Maybe because he wasn't actively trying to get into our pants. We actually end up learning some interesting things about Brendan while playing as Flynn, but like Aussie, we're just scratching the surface. At some point, he got mixed up with the wrong crowd and was eventually caught with drugs, I think it was. Then his sister was threatened and he had to leave the country to protect her, which is why he's in England. And I'm super sus that Oscar and potentially James are in on this whole racket, since Brendan has to work a pretty crappy job that he's not any good at, but is kept around because Oscar thinks he's hot and likes to look at him? It's a very messed up situation. So, of course, he's got a major chip on his shoulders, which means he often rubs people the wrong way, and has decided that, unlike Danny, he's just going to lean into what everyone thinks of him and not bother trying to better himself in the view of others. He also, though, has pricks of conscience that we see with both Flynn and Malia. Granted, you have to jump through hoops when playing as Flynn, but he will actually admit to setting you up even without you accepting his quote-unquote apology. And as Malia, I think when she says sadly she can't believe she fell for his lies, he does feel slightly bad about it. Also, when you do his worst ending and continue to just blatantly ignore him being horrible because you think you're in love with him, his why when she says she loves him is hilarious. He's just very much aware of what a horrible person he is, and he's fed up with everyone and everything. But somehow, I find myself feeling bad for him, and also can't help but think he reacts the most normal out of a lot of our hostel mates, funnily enough. So, well, congrats to Brendan, I guess, for moving up a couple notches on my Flynn list. Okay, I'm done talking about Brendan, forever, hopefully. Moving on. Next on the list is Mark. It doesn't really make sense since there's literally no difference with his route whether you're Malia or Flynn, but I think it's because there was no difference that I was disappointed. Although as someone pointed out, it is actually very much in line with Mark's character that he would treat either a male MC or female MC the same because that's just who Mark is. He's very consistent as a character. But as far as Flynn's concerned, I've put him here at number 4, which is still a respectable spot to be in. Alright, Mr. Danny coming in at number 3 again. I mean, there's not much more left to say. He's still an awesome guy, and I ranked him higher than Mark because there were some differences in his route, which was nice. Not least of all, the difference was the big pumpkin carving date, where Danny reveals he bought that cute tiny pumpkin, and Flynn responds with, "My son!" That's when I knew. Me and Flynn were gonna get on well, and Danny was able to show me that, so big thanks to Danny for that, I guess. Coming in at number 2 is Ji-hyo, who's moved up a couple spots. I don't know why, but I liked her and Flynn's chemistry more for some reason. There weren't that many changes, but the changes that were there just seemed to flow better, for lack of a better word. And Ji-hyo was great enough as a character anyway, so adding in that other factor ended up putting her higher on Flynn's side, higher on Flynn's list side of things for me. Words. You know what I mean. She's higher up the list. And everything was going so well up to that point. Anyway. Lastly, Miss Ashley ended up being my favorite route for Flynn. So she moved up quite a few spaces from where I placed her on Malia's. While she is still the same with how she holds out on not believing you after the thieving thing, her and Flynn have much better chemistry than Malia and Ashley did. There's an instant spark between them, plus we had the most changes between routes with her. Because we worked with her, we got a lot more scenes with her. Plus as Flynn, we actually did help her to learn to be more discerning about who to give her trust to. And I felt we saw her character develop a lot more than what we saw with Malia. So that, combined with her sweet personality, definitely put her as number 1 for Flynn. And with that, I think that is it, everybody. Just a couple final thoughts before we wrap up for good. So between Malia and Flynn, I'd have to say that I enjoyed playing as Flynn more. It's a funny thing to say since most of their thoughts and reactions to situations are the same, but where there's differences, I definitely ended up liking Flynn more. It's almost like Malia comes across as a tough girl who gets offended and angry easily, but is up to trying new things and easily gets her feelings hurt. I also think she's more likely to tease, although she definitely gets flustered as well. Flynn, on the other hand, how could I not bond with him over the pumpkin, as well as his winky face? Flynn comes across as more mellow to me somehow. He definitely gets ticked too. His truly angry face is a scary thing. His grumpy face is cute with his thick eyebrows. He also seems to take things more in stride somehow. Very much a peacemaker. I don't know if that makes sense, or if it's all in my imagination, but that's how I think of the two of them somehow. One other thing is that early on when playing this game, a couple of you had asked me which character I feel I like the most, since all of them have a particular quirk about them. I had to think about it quite a bit, but I think I can probably say with some certainty that I identify with Ashley the most. I'm definitely overconscious, really, of what other people think of me. I also want everybody to like me straight from moment number one. I'm also very forgiving. I've been told too forgiving sometimes, which is true. I am learning not to be so quick to forgive, but my inclination is always to believe everyone, and I definitely always want to give people another chance. So there you have it, everybody. I think I may have just blathered enough for one video, so I shall call it there. Thanks so much for listening, though. If I was going to do a too long don't read version, too long don't listen version, it would probably be, this game's very similar to Roommates, but it's not quite as good. It's still a fun dating sim with some good moments, but Roommates is definitely more polished and better written overall. Still, if you're looking for something in that vein, then this is pretty good. Just don't go in with super high expectations is all I would say. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this game as well. What you liked, what you didn't like, what you agreed with, what you didn't agree with, and what your personal lists were. Would love to hear what you all thought. And with that, it is time to say farewell, England Exchange, and go back for our final journey through Hakuoki Edo Blossoms to do the solo alone ending. I hear tissues are a must, so I will get that together. Hopefully, I'll see you there, guys. Thanks again for joining me for this series, and as always, until next time, I will see you later.